turn this sideways because I just do not have enough room because of the camera. All right. So I'm going to continue to work on his chin, and I'm going to kind of go up on this side of the cheek because it shows these great shadows here. So I'm going to start by erasing the grid in the areas I need to work. And his neck actually goes down. Now for my picture, when I look at it on the computer, it does go down into this box. On my printout, the printer kind of cut it, so I'm just going to go right about there so we know that that's his neck. You should do the neck of your person. So for my picture, it is a little hard because it's zoomed in. I'm going to have to look at the color picture so I can see this on the computer screen a little bit better over in this area. But I would shade down here. Now make sure when you're shading, you do pay attention for like these little highlights, and we're going to do some of those areas here in a minute. I'm going to use the little bit bigger blending snap just because this is more area and it's not as detailed. I'm going to start in a darker area first because I just put some fresh graphite on my blending snap. Now you see how it's kind of patchy looking? Like, let me make sure that this is focused. And we'll... Okay. There you go. That's pretty good. All right. When you have patchy areas like this, it's like patchy or blotchy or whatever you want to call it. All you have to do is take your blending snap and just keep blending over in that area. Most of the time you don't need to add any more pencil or graphite to it. If you just continue to blend, it will eventually smooth out. So this side of his cheek is pretty dark. Got his chin here. And I'm slowly rolling the blending snap because there's more graphite on the other sides. So sometimes that's how it looks like I just magically got more, is because I'm actually rolling the blending stuff. And you can blend like side to side and things like that. That is fine. You don't always have to do perfect circles. The circles are just very helpful. So he does have this like highlight here. So as you can see, I'm kind of mapping out the shadows with the blending stuff. It's a little dark. Okay. So all I'm doing is paying attention to the drawing. So I have mine printed, but you guys should have yours up on your screen. And so he does have this dark shadow that comes in about his ear here. It kind of comes down. What's nice about kind of mapping things out with your blending stuff is because you're not adding those pencil lines, it's much easier to erase if you need to. It's like we got to contour a little bit for him. And I know it's a little blotchy, so I'm going to kind of go back over. Now this is me kind of setting up the shadows. And then I would kind of continue because there are some darker areas. So you just kind of keep going back and forth and you layer. Like this area is going to be much darker. So I'm not really focused on that side just yet. But it's much easier to darken shadows than it is to always lighten things up. So I just kind of keep going back in, layering, you know, looking at my shadows, like, oh, that one needs to be darker. And then I just kind of add another layer to darken it up. And you kind of just keep working back and forth. So I'm not done with like his nose and his mouth and things like that. I will be continuing to work on these as I come up. Like as I get closer to his eye, I will be working those areas more as well, adding shadows. So it's a constant change and adjustments that you're making. You don't just do one area and then never go back to it. So don't forget, you know, you have your eraser here. I always make like a little flat little area so I can kind of just drag it for some highlights. So I just have these highlights on his chin here. He also has this highlight that goes right on the bottom of his chin. So I would take this, get a nice little flat area. Go like that. Same thing, you would kind of keep these highlights here, but I want to really get, there's a really dark shadow here. Don't be afraid of those dark shadows, okay? I recommend layering them in, but you still need to get those areas darker. Now I like to keep my videos kind of short. So for this video, I'm pretty much doing the chin. And you can see that I'm starting to do the cheek. Okay, and I would come up on this side as well. This side is going to be much darker, so I'm kind of saving that. I want to blend that in. It's got this nice shadow crease, but it didn't need to curve that far. I know I'm going over the line of his chin a little bit, but I can always clean that up with the eraser. You don't want to go too crazy, but don't worry if you go a little over. You can always take your kneadable eraser and clean that up. And I do feel his lips need to be a little darker in certain areas, so I would go back in here and shade these. So as you're working, you kind of notice like areas that need to be touched up and things like that, and you can go back and do those. And then, you know, you have these highlights, and you can always go back in and use your eraser and blend those out. So like I said, depending on your image, you will need to do the neck area. I'm going to have to look at my picture online, but I'm going to do this area here and around. It's pretty straightforward. And yeah, so I'm just going to keep working. So I'm going to do another video of like the cheeks, one on the forehead, and just kind of keep going from there. So this isn't done. I still have some shadowed areas that I want to kind of focus a little bit more on. Darken it up a little bit here and along this jawline. This little shadow right here. This side needs to be a little darker. So I would just layer another kind of layer of shadows on to get those certain areas darker. And then come back in with my kneadable to kind of get those highlights. And that's slightly blurry.